So I was trying to come up with the perfect opening for this week's show, and as I'll admit, it was a little bit of a struggle, especially after I realized that my friend comedian Tom Kelly had the perfect joke. So this is completely credited to him with his permission. Go ahead and follow him on social media at Tom Kelly Show. And this is his joke, but I knew I couldn't top it. NPR is reporting, quote, Hillary Clinton was wobbly, weak in the knees, and needed help getting into a van. Which is, of course, exactly how Bill likes his women. Trump vs. Hillary starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, yeah! It does. I got the Rockin Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie flu. Welcome to Trump versus Hillary, a.k.a. Tuesday Night Raw. A little inside joke for everybody here in the studio and in the booth. I am Christian Bladt. This is Trump versus Hillary. Follow the show on Twitter at TrumpHillary16. Like us on YouTube. Comment, rate us on iTunes. All that stuff helps. You can find me on Twitter at ChristianDMZ. Next to me, for those of you watching on YouTube, Scott Moore at SMan80. Stephen Helmkamp, not on the couch of dissent, at the end of the desk, at the corner of dissent, on Twitter, at Stephen Helmkamp.
Just feel it, Chelsea.
Trying to
make America great again, okay?
And trying to wheel herself away from the dance moves is Chelsea Galicia, at Chelsea Galicia. And those of you watching on YouTube, you don't see Drexel Heard, but wait! He's with us. He lives on, and a little bit of Drexel Heard lives on in all of our hearts.
He's in the hospital with Hillary Clinton right now, bedside.
He's checking her vitals, and it seems like she's going to be out on Thursday. Via the phone, Drexel Heard on Twitter at Drexel Heard. Hello, Drexel.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going great for all of us. We'll have you on the phone for probably the first half of the show, Drexel. But we know you've got places to be. But that's what we like about Drexel. He would not miss this topic. He did not trust us to talk about this without him. Yeah. So we're going to kind of just talk about some facts. On Sunday, Hillary Clinton was at a September 11th memorial ceremony, and she didn't feel good. She collapsed, and video started making the rounds of her being helped into the van. She apparently lost a shoe. So there's all that stuff. And then...
That was not true. The shoe did not fit.
Yeah, their shoe.
So they must have quit.
They must have quit. Exactly. Thank you. I'm glad Stephen was on that page. So, that part's all fine. Look, it was a hot day in New York. She's a little bit of an older lady. That part's fine. The information that came out of the campaign, well, let's just say left a little to be desired in the accuracy department. So I don't know. I mean, I think that what you see here is when Hillary's campaign gets flustered, their first reaction was to lie, misdirect, and obfuscate. I looked up the word to make sure I was using it right, and I did, and I was really happy. Right now, thank you. I'm very proud of myself. Right now, Hillary Clinton is the great and powerful Oz. Pay no attention to the wobbly woman behind the Iron Curtain, the hacking wobbly kneed woman. So, I don't know who to start with. I should have actually brought a prop. I should have brought a quarter and flipped a coin.
You should have brought the Hillary Clinton
that
we had last week.
The Hillary sign, which
the stand-in for
Stephen. I'm gonna start with our telephone guest, Drexel. I feel like you're a visitor here on the show. Give us your thoughts on the facts, but specifically as they unfolded, not so much as we know today on Tuesday, but as that day went along and we started to hear things. What was your reaction in the immediacy, and what did you think as the day went along, Drexel?
Well, first of all, the campaign never lied. But I got a lot of texts and Facebook messages and tweets, like I woke up to all of that Sunday, about what I thought when I saw the video, because, Wolf Blitzer played it 40 times in less than 10 minutes that day. So my first reaction, of course, was like, I hope she's okay. And then, well, let's just wait for some answers after that. I think throughout this campaign, I've been pretty critical of the way that the Clinton campaign communication team has been when it comes to what David Axelrod called over the weekend penchant for privacy, because we know that despite the perception of trouble almost every time something comes out, it's a disappointment to Republicans and Stephen. So the campaign has to definitely do better, and the campaign and Jennifer Palmerari, the campaign communications director, acknowledged that over the weekend. We saw during President Clinton's interview on Sunday, and then Hillary's on CNN on Monday, that they're trying to be a little bit more forthcoming with personal information. That said, I can understand why they don't overly trust the press, and why would they? Because you've got Emmy-winning journalists out there making stuff about DNC meetings. So look, I think the Trump campaign played a smart card by not digging into it, especially considering his campaign manager today, sorry, I'm bringing it up, stated that we all have a right to privacy. I appreciated Trump's response and Clinton's response was what any normal person probably would say. I found out this week that I haven't taken a sick day all year, so I definitely been sick, and sometimes you can barrel on through certain things, or you don't want the perception that you can't handle something, and that's what Hillary Clinton did. And I think if anyone can give birth, campaign twice as a first lady, campaign as a senator and win, campaign against the Obama machine and win more votes, log more miles than any Secretary of State in history, sit for an 11-hour hearing, and then get back on the campaign wagon again, I'd say she earned a nap for the day. And President Obama was in Philly today, and so that was great.
I saw that. Well, and look, you mentioned the Trump campaign. The best move for Donald Trump was to send a very sincere, get well soon, because you can infer anything you want into it. That's all he needs to say is get well soon. He gets as much mileage out of it. So now I want to ask Stephen, who might have been stewing a little bit in his seat. Drexel said that the campaign did not lie at any point, and maybe they didn't lie on Sunday, but do you feel like they've been forthcoming about the status of former Secretary Clinton's well-being?
Of course not. It was another lie. She was diagnosed with the pneumonia 2 days before that whole incident happened.
It's not a lie, though.
That's just
holding.
It's
a lie.
You can be sick. You're traveling around. You're campaigning. You're exerting so much energy. It's okay to be sick. You're a human being, but it's just another lie. So anyone who's like either on the fence,
we'll let him finish and then we'll go to Scott.
It absolutely is.
No.
Wait, that they didn't come out and say there was a diagnosis, or because they had blamed it on
because
pollen?
they said that it was an allergy. They said that it was she was dehydrated and she was hot and wearing a long sleeve shirt, and that was the reason why she fell over. Your whole Secret Service and everyone else around you is wearing a pantsuit and a full-on suit. No one else was falling over. Your cough at that rally was part of your pneumonia diagnosis. But again, we're just dodging and whatever. If you want to come out and say, I'm sick, I've got the flu, I need to take a rest, by all means, get better, take care of yourself. But it's just another lie. I think it's more like just
Scott,
the principle.
You seem to disagree.
No, I think you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if she said something, on Friday, then it's going to play into this whole thing that she's weak. And again, I have a problem with focusing on her health, as to me it feels like it's a sexist comment to say she's a weak old woman, she can't handle herself. Whereas it's smart that Donald Trump didn't actually say anything, because if he elected, he'd be the oldest elected president, and he has no room to talk about his health. As we've seen, he's displayed none of his health records at all.
There's a letter out.
Yeah, the letter says he's in the best health
There's a
ever.
letter from the doctor.
Take that
Just not in
seriously.
details.
To be fair, that letter's from Dr. Scholes or Doc Martin. I think Doc Martin, actually.
You know,
it's
the thing
ridiculous.
is that the left was saying that her health was just a big conspiracy theory.
No, I'm not saying it's a big conspiracy
and we're questioning
theory.
about her health.
Well,
and
here's the thing, and I'll let Scott finish in a second. I mean, obviously, the health of candidates is certainly an issue. It was an issue when it was John McCain.
It's always been an issue, and we can go years back, and we can talk about how people have hidden their health woes in the past, and just in recent history, it's happened a lot.
Howard Dean couldn't hide how crazy he was.
Well, I mean, when you just think about just in the 50s and 60s, and you think about like Lyndon
I was
Johnson,
let out a woo,
and
but I didn't want to sound crazy.
It's all right.
I mean, it's definitely something that's been kept under wraps, and there is that really fine balance of.
I mean, we had a 4-term president who, the term that they used then, he was crippled.
And by his fourth term, he had congestive heart failure, and his doctor said he was going to die if he ran for the fourth term, and he did. Lyndon Johnson would have died of a heart attack if he had run and won again in office. So, I mean, there is definitely health issues, and yes, I think it's important, and I think, yes, she does have to come back and give more of her medical records out now, because Now people are going to continue to question her health, but as far as the big
honestly,
picture, it's not a
that was the most frustrating thing about it was the media, but more social media narrative was, hey, we don't get to ask about this. We don't get to talk. It was like, well, she collapsed and we've seen it. It's not she was rumored to have collapsed.
Exactly.
So I think we need to talk about it. Yeah. And, it's fine. And I think that, for whatever it's worth, she's the one who we see coughing and now we've seen falling. So it's why it's being made an issue for her and not so much for Trump. I mean, it's just as simple. Like, look at Trump. I don't know what that thing is on his head, but it's some kind of growth that needs to be removed.
He's got amazing stamina.
Can I say something?
That's not what Melania says. Chelsea, what were you going to say?
As much as we're focusing on physical health, which I understand, and you can't seriously take that letter from that doctor seriously.
The Bible, I take it as seriously as the Bible.
But, almost.
So you don't take the Bible seriously then at all.
It's good to know. Probably more important to me than physical health is mental health.
Yes.
And so I would really like 3 doctors, a psychologist, psychiatrist, to evaluate both Hillary and Trump, a full psych workup that is fully public.
In the 5 seconds since you said that, Dr. Drew just signed up and said, I'll do it. So you already got one.
But I want the tests run, like the MMPI and all those tests that tell us or give us some sense at least of how honest, truthful, the veracity for, consistency and reliability. I think that's really important, especially in this day and age where the conservative solution to the gun mass shooting problems is all mental health. So if mental health is such a big deal, I want to see mental health
I mean, it's a great point. Seeing the mental health and, of course, physical health, that's something we should see for all of our candidates.
And I want to see things like, I understand now that narcissism is not included as a disorder in the most recent edition of the DSM, or so I've heard. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist to know exactly, but this is...
But she plays one on TV.
But I want... those I want to know how narcissist. I mean, to some extent you can say we're all narcissistic, we're all concerned about ourselves.
We're all on camera right now.
Hey.
But at
somebody
some point,
checked her makeup and her selfie stick. What?
That was me.
Thanks, Scott. Oh my God. And by the way, I got that advice to do that from Christian.
After I finished fixing my hair.
Yes.
But anyway, so the point is, yes, we should have all these things on our candidates. A perfect example of something that, we have no business in is there's this effort. I was just reading this actually just a little while ago, so it wasn't in the notes. But there's this effort to try and unseal the court records for Donald and Ivana Trump's divorce 26 years ago. You know what? We don't need to know. I mean, I don't know. If it was within the last it was during the campaign. If it was recent, it's 26 years ago. I don't need to know.
He was a private citizen. Why do we need to know that?
I think that.
Who cares about that? His divorce filings?
It's not a criminal
the divorce
record.
Filing, but the fact that he was a private citizen.
Yeah, that doesn't.
I'm saying in regards to his divorce filings.
But, I mean, it's a divorce filing. It's not, an unsealed. It's not unsealing a criminal record.
Right,
so,
and it's old, and that is old news. But no, it has nothing to do.
Right, him being a private citizen does make a difference between Hillary Clinton, who's been in politics.
It's like you see this kind of like overreach by people that feel like they're just always trying to dig it up, and it's like I don't know what we're going to get out of there now. If a judge rules that we get it, well, I'm certainly going to be interested in knowing what's in there. But I'm not asking for it. I'm going to want to know. There's got to be something.
I mean, if the dirt's there.
If she doesn't want it to go out there either, So, anyway, so I guess that's what it really came down to was that she's got pneumonia. She canceled a trip out here. I believe she was coming out to L.A.
Seth MacFarlane.
Bunch of fundraisers. She canceled Vegas. Yeah, canceled a lot of fundraisers.
So that means you're not going to Vegas now?
I think the fundraisers were still on.
Bill was going to go.
Yeah. Oh, she'll take that money,
honestly,
honey.
I'd probably rather meet Bill anyway. But anyway, so and I think that if now it's going to be tough for her though because they don't want to ease up on her schedule because then it's like it is too much for her. But at the same time, you pretty much can't get any more video of her having trouble, getting downstairs or anything, because there is, as we've talked about, the conspiracy theories out there, that she's very sick and she, for the sake of her health, she should step out.
And that conspiracy theory is now proven. It's not a theory.
No, there's conspiracy theories that
I'm talking about.
Like I always say, Stephen.
She's sick and she's frail. It's proven.
It's always very laughable.
I'm talking about. Wait, hang on 1 second, Drexel. I'm talking about theories that she has Parkinson's.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And the fact that she has a catheter falling out of her family. I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
Right, so now we'll all be quiet and let Drexel talk because he's on the phone.
But I don't think that these last, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think just from a ground game perspective, I think that would have, she would have benefited maybe 3 days from that. But from a news cycle perspective, it wouldn't have made much of a difference because President Obama was out in Philly today, and Michelle Obama is out later this week. Either Wednesday or something like either Wednesday or Friday or something like that. So I don't think that that Hillary Clinton probably would have sucked up the news cycle. I think President Obama came out pretty strong today in Philadelphia, and Michelle Obama is going to come out strong later this week. So Hillary Clinton probably would not have been in the news all that much. That would have helped her. And I think that the Obama's going out there and Elizabeth Warren out on Friday. And
Drexel, it's a good thing you mention it because speaking of the news cycle, this actually came at a pretty good time for Hillary as she was being criticized for the basket of deplorables comment. What she said was, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. And she argued that Trump has lifted up people who are racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, etc. She later retracted the half part, so apparently there's still a basket, but it's not the double gulp size, it's the big gulp size. So, not too far off from Mitt Romney's 47% comment.
Well, no, no.
It's half! She's saying it's about half, so, what? Half is half! Chelsea, are you trying to tell me that half isn't half? Half does not equal half? Anyway.
I'm not going to even respond
I have
to
so
that.
Many, so many things I could respond to
on that. I want to hear Chelsea. Yes. Are you defending the basket of deplorables?
Well,
Chelsea?
that's what I was going to ask you. Like, do you feel like it's all right to characterize the supporters of your opponent as deplorable?
Don't you talk about me like that, Chelsea.
So you're
the other
wait, hang on.
This is the other half.
This is news. You're supporting Trump. You're a supporter officially.
No, but I feel like Hillary Clinton just called me and put me in the basket of deplorables.
Probably. All right, Chelsea, you have the floor.
Thank you. It was definitely not a smart thing to say.
Sure.
But compared to the things that Trump said, and that he's now saying that she's disqualified for saying something like this, which would be insulting to so many Americans. Like, excuse me, you insulted me every other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for him to try and bury her because of this vicious attack, I can't even believe that attack, that it was some, vicious, vile thing, and really that these people are hardworking Americans. But the truth is that there are some hardworking Americans who are racist, homophobic, and the sort. So it wasn't a smart thing to say, but for some people it was not an inaccurate thing to say to describe them.
Hey, their votes still count.
Right. But there's racists, homophobes on the other side as well. So it's not just on the Republican side. But there are hardworking Americans who like
so was that
who
your
have
defense?
nothing against.
When Trump said Mexicans are rapists and criminals, did you come on here and say, but white people are rapists and criminals too? Did you say that on the show?
No, but agreed. The point that you made that Trump has said some idiot, horrible rhetoric things, I completely agree with you. But there are people in America who have just been casually watching the news and have no malicious intent against Hillary Clinton, but like what Trump says, maybe a few of his policies and where he stands on some issues, and they want to vote for Donald Trump. So for Hillary to come out and say that, they feel offended.
But that's not the happy.
Wait, hang on 1 second, Drexel. We'll let Scott speak, and then we'll go to Drexel.
I was just going to say, but that's how she prefaced it. Yes, she shouldn't have said that, but she did preface it by saying gross generalistic.
And
but
Trump
then she said,
never
but she said the other half are these hardworking Americans who have felt they're left behind, and those are the things that have been left off, because she did say that. And that is true. And yes, I would never say a number if I was going for a gross generalistic. I would say there is a group of his supporters who are X, Y, and Z. And that is true. But
a good point. Would that comment have been okay with you if she would have just posed it the way that
there's a chunk of voters, of supporters that are this and that, because there are.
Of course there are.
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean...
So the idea that there's just a small segment of a group of people who you can characterize in a certain way sounds actually an awful lot about radical Islamic terror in the term that they use. It's like a very specific number. Don't put a percentage on it. Now, Drexel, before we move on, you had something you wanted to say, but I wanted to let Scott finish. So your thought on...
I was just going to say a couple of things. You know, Paul Ryan, throughout this campaign, has called Trump's remarks racist. Mike Lee, called on the campaign today to denounce David Duke. So, I obviously thought that at first when I heard it, I was like, oh, was that maybe another gaffe? But then I realized that, Hillary Clinton was at an LGBT fundraiser that nobody seems to mention in any news cycle, that the audience was very specific to a target of Donald Trump and his supporters throughout the campaign. So I think a week where Donald Trump, kind of dangerously answered questions about foreign policy, where he praised President Putin, where he talked about pulling 9/11, victims of 9/11 out of the rubble, while he was at the same time giving interviews on TV and talking about Muslims, celebrating in New Jersey. David Duke coming out at the same time, and I think that Hillary Clinton's comment was something, and I mentioned to Stephen over the weekend when he texted me about this. I said, if Chelsea, myself, or Scott were walking down the street and somebody said something, I think that he'd be the first person to say something, and he would probably think the same thing about that person that Hillary Clinton has been talking about over the past few weeks. She's made this statement a couple times already, and it's not made the news. But the moment that she put a half on it, that's when it made the news. Sunday, Donald Trump called Senator Warren Pocahontas again. So this is nothing new for Donald Trump, and this is exactly what Hillary Clinton's talking about. This is exactly what she should be talking about, because at the end of the day, that's a quarter of America that wasn't going to vote for her anyway. This is true stuff. Today or over the weekend in New York City, I was reading an article, and I posted it, about how this Muslim woman was walking her kid down the street, and in what I like to call Trump's America, somebody lit her garment on fire as she was walking down the street, and basically told her to get out of America. So this is the kind of stuff that Hillary Clinton's talking about, and this is the kind of stuff that folks like Stephen, who casually quasi support Donald Trump, should be talking about and kind of denouncing every once in a while.
Do you denounce that?
Because a crazed person lit someone's clothes on fire? Absolutely. That's not okay.
Okay, just checking.
But there's all kinds of senseless acts of violence going on in America. That's not the only type that's going on right now.
He didn't say it was the only.
No, but he's just using it as an example. Yeah. And the thing that you mentioned, about them still not really wanting to completely 100%. Yes, they say they don't want the endorsement of David Duke, but the condemnation is probably not as strong as it could be, because as we've talked about, I think we talked about it last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, they still want the David Duke supporters to vote for them. I mean, they're not crazy.
Absolutely.
You don't want to alienate them, so they are distancing them as much as they can.
They need them.
Yeah,
they don't have the math to be able to win without getting a high white straight male vote.
That guy that lit that woman's garment on fire, you can't say that he was wearing a "Make America Great" t-shirt at the time. You can't say that he's voting for Trump. You don't know that. That's just assuming.
No.
He's just some crazy lunatic voting for Jill Stein. You don't know.
Right, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Jill
about
Stein would be a lunatic.
The rhetoric has sparked these people's outrage. When the Bernie Sanders voters got out there, they were inspired to actually act, to be active.
The rhetoric hasn't inspired it. The shootings have inspired it. 9/11 inspired it. Close Orlando inspired it. San Bernardino inspired it.
Not lighting somebody on the street.
Speaking of Bernie,
yes,
it's been the violence.
Chelsea has something burning.
Thanks. Bernie spoke out today at a protest for the Dakota Access Pipeline, and I would really love to know what Hillary and Trump would say about that massive controversy. And since we don't have comments from them, I think I'd like to know what Stephen believes Trump would say about that if he did make a statement on it.
I don't know. I don't want to speak for Trump.
Well, he called him Pocahontas, of course.
I'm not going to speak for Trump.
I just want somebody who, I guess, understands his way of thinking.
He would probably say Bernie who, and then move on.
No, but this Dakota Access Pipeline is a really great indication of how somebody would deal with something that deals with energy, right? Environment, water. This is a really important thing that I think we need.
And Native
their
American
comments.
rights, and there's a lot there.
It would be very indicative of where somebody is for either of the candidates to come out and strongly support one side or the other.
Yeah. Well,
I just want to chime in on that real quick.
Sure.
I know I agree with Chelsea on the Hillary Clinton piece of it, because I do know that part of her policy plan is to support Native American lands in situations like this. So yeah, I mean, the Clinton campaign, probably has to come out and say something at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
Over the weekend, somebody mentioned that to me, and I said, I'm sure the Obama administration said, probably, we don't want to embarrass the White House as they did with the TPP. So that's probably a position that.
Well, Hillary Clinton's voting records with pipelines has not been too high. When you look at the Keystone pipeline, she made a bunch of money off of that, and some donor.
She didn't make any money off of it.
Actually, the contractor who was going to do the pipeline made a huge donation, and then he got the contract to actually do it.
Now this sounds like Clinton cash talk,
it is a part of
and we don't have time to talk Clinton cash.
It sounds like Trump with the Attorney General of Florida.
Clinton is
we need to have everyone in studio to talk.
We could talk about Trump.
She gets checked.
There's one more thing I want to get from Drexel before we let him go, and I did want to get your thoughts, Drexel. We'll let you take the lead on discussing the Commander-in-Chief's town hall that NBC did. That I admit, I was like, oh, that should be interesting. I thought beforehand, and then when I slept through it, I really didn't think it was that interesting. I had to go back and actually see what happened. Drexel, your takeaway from having a great opportunity where you're talking to the two candidates for president before any debates on a primetime special. Do you think Matt Lauer handled that interview well, and do you think that the American voters were well informed about these two candidates after watching that?
Well, first of all, I thought the whole thing was incredibly boring. But Matt Lauer probably should not have been. Matt Lauer is not necessarily a journalist that you would expect to give questions about politics.
Right. Unfortunately, Billy Bush was busy, so they had to go to Matt Lauer.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was part of the original problem. I know, with NBC, they needed to kind of spread their people around, and if it had been Rachel Maddow, probably the Trump campaign probably would not have approved of some of those NBC commentators.
And I think Trump wouldn't have sat at a desk with Lester Holt. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Right. Or Rachel Maddow or Lawrence O'Donnell or Chris Hayes or any of those guys.
Lawrence O'Donnell's crazy. So.
But I think that Matt Lauer, did what Matt Lauer does on the Today Show, and he tried his best the problem with Matt Lauer was that he only had 30 minutes per candidate, and he was too busy trying to speed up Hillary Clinton and then not fact-checking Donald Trump, that it made for a really odd debate. I mean, a really odd conversation.
Well, there was a scintillating conversation with Hillary about email headers that I'm really glad he got in there, because if he hadn't gotten that in there...
And I think those are the questions that people, A, wanted to ask, and B, that Hillary Clinton, has... what I've always said, needed a solid answer on, and like I said, hopefully she continues that answer, which is fine. But I think when you only have 30 minutes to talk about foreign policy, I know like the third debate's all on foreign policy. I think we'll probably get a little bit more, but that you can, just from that debate, you can kind of see who has a clear grasp on foreign policy, whether you agree with their direction of foreign policy or not. At least it's not Gary Johnson and Aleppo, but Donald Trump has some pretty dangerous policies. Even today at a rally, talking about shooting Iranian ships out of the water if they make a gesture at United States ships. So that's the kind of stuff that can start World War III. So this is the kind of stuff that Matt Lauer probably should have been getting at. But instead, we were talking about how unfair Matt Lauer was about not fact-checking Donald Trump. But you can't really fact-check Donald Trump because he doesn't really ever...
It would take too long to fact-check.
All right, before we let you go, Drexel, we'll let Stephen have some parting thoughts for you. What were you going to say, Stephen?
Matt Lauer did fine. The only reason the left is pissed is because they didn't counter Trump when he said, I didn't vote for the war in Iraq. He said one thing on the Howard Stern because he had never been asked that question before. Months and months after that, 10 other interviews, he said, I do not vote for the war. In regards to the Iranians... Actually, that's very true. You can fact-check that all
Esquire
day.
came out and said the same thing.
All right, well,
that's not a hard thing to fact-check.
You guys disagree? agree. So we'll move on to the next point.
In terms of the
Stephen.
Iranians, they're taunting us and they're bullying us, and they want to hold our people hostage until we give them $400 million in cash.
Which, by the way, every time I hear that, I'm like, if they have our citizens, I'd rather give them money than get into some kind of military action.
Yeah, we already know what the money was.
The fact is that they're holding these people ransom.
It's money they owed you.
Yeah,
it was money we owed them. Yes, but they were not letting our
by the way,
try
doing that with the mob. Try holding on to money that you owe the mob. So the Iranians are actually, less of a threat than the mafia. Anyway, your thoughts, Stephen.
They're taunting us. They're laughing at us. They're making violent gestures at us, chasing us with their speed bumps. So if Trump wants to fire a warning shot at them, by all means. We're the superior power. How are we going to allow them to continue to do that?
Giuliani thing, until the war is over, anything is legal. Yeah. And that alone should scare the shit out of most Americans when it comes
Why?
to
because we want to be safe? Because we don't want to be bullied around? We don't want our people to be held hostage? That should scare us?
But firing a shot is not the best solution.
No, it's not.
Right.
A warning shot?
That's what we're talking about, not holding people hostage. I think we've been pretty good at hostage negotiations over the years. Not saying that, Carter, I was
going to say Jimmy Carter would disagree.
Iranian protesters, not Reagan.
And if Trump would actually do it or not is a whole other thing. For him to make that threat and that verbal threat, I think that's awesome. Let him know, we have weapons and we will use them. For him to actually do it, now that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other deal.
So you would rather say,
I'd rather him show
hang on 1 second. We'll let Drexel, you tie up your thought, and then we'll let you talk, Chelsea.
Sorry, I was just going to say, every time President Obama says something, he's not trying to start World War III, and he's been making, declarations and statements over the past few years of his presidency. So, Donald Trump comes out and he says it a little bit differently, and all of a sudden it makes a difference. But the difference is that Donald Trump will actually pull the trigger, and President Obama will probably use more, and Hillary Clinton will probably use more diplomatic channels. So.
I'd rather show strength so he doesn't have to.
Well, show strength without having to use
because that's working out so well.
Obama or Hillary would use drones, so that's the difference. He's not actually pulling a trigger. Anyway, Drexel, we know you have a busy evening, so thank you for making the time to call in. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you then. So, Chelsea, do you remember what the point you were trying to make that Drexel talked over you? He's not even here, and he's still talking over you.
Not really, but it had something. I think it was that you want him to say, we're going to shoot at you, and then not do it. It's just, before
I didn't say that.
Well, you said
if we're led to it.
No, I don't.
I want him to put the threat there and let him know, we have the weapons to stop you from doing that.
Because
they don't know that exactly. I was
but
people don't know that.
So you'd rather have.
This is very juvenile.
You'd rather have U.S. citizens be held ransom and be bullied around by Iran.
No,
nobody's being bullied around.
Then show some strength.
You're ridiculous.
No. How?
Because you're treating this like this is how you deal with a playground bully, and it's not.
Okay.
It's a very
what do you do
in a different way?
What do? You just pay the ransoms?
We don't pay ransoms. If you realize that that's not policy.
I think it's pretty clear that it was a ransom that's come out as a ransom.
No, it has not come out as a ransom. Right. That was money that was owed to them. We do not pay ransoms. That's a government policy. We do not.
We just have citizens that weren't going to be released until it was made.
Sometimes it's just better to not.
I know the show's winding down, by the way, but if in the booth, if we can get the chat room in there, because we haven't had a chance to interact with the people in the chat. One thing I want to make sure we get time for is something that Scott sent. It was the census report today on income, and the idea is that helps the incumbent. Including that our incumbent party, obviously President Obama can't run again, but the incumbent party has a 58%, well, that's not true. Let me rephrase that. President Obama has a 58% approval rating.
Right.
Now, his party is the incumbent.
Exactly. They're saying he's taking the third term
and he's up 15 points from right before the 2014 midterm election, which did not go the way the Democrats wanted. So are people just, getting a little bit more wistful for the fact that Obama's not going to be around and that they have to vote for one of these two
lesser evils,
inferior candidates? They want the third term of Obama if they can figure it out. But I think it's interesting. And then also, I saw that specifically U.S. household income is a record increase in 2015 after years of stagnation, suggesting the recovery from the Great Recession was finally lifting ordinary citizens who had been largely left behind. The economy was a major factor in 2008. if people feel, it doesn't matter what all these stats say. If people feel that they're doing okay, then there'll be something to be said for that.
Yeah. But the 5.2% is a big increase, and the 1.2% of people dropping out of poverty level is also big, and so those are huge things. That's the biggest drop in year to year in the census recorded history. So that's really good news, not just for political stuff. I mean, it really is good news for everyday Americans that they're able to be making more money and be in a better place than they were.
Let me ask you this: if Hillary gets elected and she goes down.
In what way? You mean
like if she goes down before January, no, like she gets taken out, like assassinated.
Oh Jesus!
Say she gets elected.
I thought you were talking about indictments or
if she did,
all right.
Before Obama's out of office, would he then?
No. Tim Kaine would be president. Yeah, because that's So
I was just thinking of a creative way Obama.
That's Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp. If the Secret Service needs his phone number, you can contact me.
That is something that came up back in 1960 because Kennedy was potentially almost. They tried this crazy guy from New Hampshire almost tried to blow him up in Palm Beach, his house, in 1960, and that would have been a kind of a constitutional crisis. Like what would have happened.
Was it after the election?
Yes, it was in December of 1960. What would have happened?
So he hadn't been sworn in.
Right. Would Lyndon Johnson have been become his president instead because he was the winning VP candidate? Yeah. What would have happened? But yes, the president's term expires on January 20th regardless. And then, they would have to make changes. Yeah. Likely, but that is something that has never happened before. But hopefully never will.
We shouldn't have to worry about that. So it would be Tim Kaine. I'm sorry.
Well, likely. Bernie. I mean, that is a good question.
In what world it would have been Bernie, but I just in case you were holding out hope, it's not Bernie.
Thanks.
It would not be Obama, unfortunately, because his term expires.
Talking about people who aren't going to be president. Gary Johnson doesn't know where Aleppo is, and we were talking like I had to think about for a second where Aleppo is, but I'm not running for president. Right. Yeah. None of us here are running for president, but I don't know. I think look, there are definitely gotcha questions that presidential candidates get. That wasn't one of them. That was a conversation, and he's like, well, what about in Aleppo? And he's like, the who now? You mean the dog food? No, sir. That's Alpo.
That's what I was thinking.
But you know what? I have a lot of respect for how he handled it, or the way that I heard that he handled it. He said, "I messed up. I blanked. No excuse."
Right. It's not the questions of the
interviewer. It's true. He owned up to it the way I would say neither of the other two candidates would have. So there's a little bit of respect for that.
But I think it is an indication that people, the things that come to mind for people in politics are not about the consequences of our military actions. And I think that that's a sad but true fact in America, is that we want to be militarily aggressive, but then we don't really care so much about the consequences
and the details too. I was going to say we don't really seem to care about the actual details on what's actually happening on the ground. But in his defense, I will say though, the way the question was asked was.
And
it was like, and what about Aleppo? It was a little weird. Like it was the way it was, and I'm not saying like, and he didn't take excuse, but it was a weird way of phrasing it. That kind of
try and get out of it by saying that the question was sort of
right, and he did that was great
because we've all seen other candidates, maybe even not for president, who would have definitely pretended they knew what they knew about it. It's like, well, I think it's a serious issue that requires more consideration.
And then try to talk around it, but it was a weird.
But let me get back to
they phrased it.
Yeah, let me get back to my 5-point plan. Omad Ochan in the chat room. Stephen really hates Hillary Rodham Clinton. Do you hate Hillary Clinton?
I don't hate anybody. I hate corruption.
You hate corruption.
Well, then you definitely shouldn't even think about what corruption in politics.
We can ask him, because you're here, what do you think of Trump hiring David Bossie, who we dubbed the godfather of Citizens United? He used to run Citizens United, and now he's on
Trump's done a lot of dirty things in his past. I'm not proud about it.
Right now. He just hired him a few weeks ago. He just joined the campaign.
It was news when we talked about it last week. Yeah.
Hey. I don't know. That's who we wanted to bring on his team. I don't know. I don't think it's great.
I think what Stephen meant to say is, well, at least he didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing, I don't hate Hillary Clinton. It's just that I don't like the corruption. I can't stand the line.
But then you can't with Trump then, because that's all. He has a background of corruption as well. So
I agree. He hasn't paid contractors. He's put small businesses out of work. I agree. There's some stuff I don't like about Trump for sure. I can see both sides of the coin.
But because Hillary's history is longer and more public,
right? Then
there's more
I mean, I think Trump's history is just as public.
Well, but he won't even put his tax records out there.
It's not as much.
Still waiting for those.
When Matt Lauer asked him about his experience with foreign affairs that would allow him to be a good commander-in-chief, he's like, I've traveled around the world and I've built a business.
I mean, if you're a private citizen, what other experience are you going to have in terms of foreign affairs?
And that's someone you want to be president.
But I think as a private citizen, he does have some decent experience in foreign affairs. I mean, he's done business with all the countries around the world.
I guess I could run for president because I've done production management for TV shows around the world.
No, you haven't built an empire.
You should run for president, Scott.
I've hired local people around the world.
Built a billion empire around the world. I'm not saying that is better than any other politician who's been in office forever.
What makes you good at something is you run businesses, and then you don't let us see really the fruits or lack thereof of those businesses, i.e. the tax returns. How can we take anything seriously that you credit to your business experience?
He's under audit, Charles.
All right. Well,
you don't really believe that.
There's a quick point. There's a quick point to talk. Did he touch you? We're gonna have to put you back on the couch. There's no touching on the panel. Very briefly, we'll talk about the Real Clear Politics average has Hillary Clinton up 2.4.
Margin of error.
That's well within the margin of error, as I said before the show.
Yes.
Too close to call. That's officially too close. It's in the margin of error. It's too close to call.
Electoral math is still on Hillary's side.
Sure.
So,
but we're just talking about the polls.
The polls.
I have one final question for Stephen before we go.
Electoral College
I will let him, touch my back if he answers this question.
Answer the question, Stephen. That's my advice to you.
Who did Stephen support in the primary?
That's a good question. Are you happy to say? Did you vote? Are you registered to vote in California or Florida?
California.
Okay. And who did you support in the primaries?
I didn't vote.
There you go. Quick question. You have 60 seconds to answer. What did you think about Hillary Clinton taking questions from reporters on her plane?
Finally.
Yeah, because you've been talking about it every show.
She listened to you.
Hack and Hillary had to take a break there and hide behind a little wall there. But I think it's good. I think she needs to continue to do that. I think that it definitely helps her supporters and people who are undecided. I mean, people want to hear from her and have all kinds of media ask her random questions and have her kind of be on the fire.
All right, so you felt like that was a good step.
Yeah.
All right, see that.
Continue on.
Look at that.
I mean,
and Drexel missed it, but you said something nice about Hillary. Yeah. Anyway, thanks to everybody in the chat. There was a great conversation back and forth in the chat for last week's show between Kim and Storage Yard Resident, which I really enjoyed. I don't have time to read it, but just know I enjoyed both of you participating and commenting on the show. So the show at Trump Hillary 16 will be back next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. And again, follow us at Trump Hillary 16, like on YouTube, comment and rate on iTunes. For the invisible Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard, Stephen Helmkamp at Stephen Helmkamp, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia, Scott Moore at SMan80, Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. This has been Trump vs. Hillary. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Clinton Cash.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.